and I asked her if she would consider having tea with me one afternoon at the Beverly Hills Brown Derby. And their ability to inspire us and to help us through troubled times.
Picture this. Beverly Hills, 1942. The Ambassador Hotel's Coconut Grove ballroom. Hollywood's elite gathered for the Academy Awards ceremony. Champagne glasses clinking, studio executives whispering deals. Then suddenly, the envelope opens. Joan Fontaine for suspicion. The room holds its breath as the sisters lock eyes across the table. For the first time in Oscar history, siblings had been nominated against each other for Best Actress. But what happened next would ignite the most legendary feud in Hollywood history. For the next 78 years, this moment would define their relationship. Sisters who should have celebrated together instead became bitter enemies. But in her final years, at age 89, Olivia de Havilland finally broke decades of silence. What she revealed changed everything we thought we knew about their legendary rivalry. Tonight, we're revealing the 5 devastating secrets that destroyed the de Havilland-Fontaine sisterhood. The childhood cruelty that started everything, the Oscar night betrayal that witnesses remember differently than both sisters claimed, the romantic revenge that nearly ended careers, the deathbed war that tore their family apart forever. And finally, Olivia's stunning confession at 89 that exposed who was really responsible for their 70-year feud. These weren't just any celebrities. These are 2 Academy Award-winning legends whose rivalry became the template for every Hollywood feud that followed. Studio executives used their hatred to sell magazines. Directors cast them strategically to fuel publicity. But the truth behind their war was far more tragic than anyone realized. For decades, Hollywood buried the real story. Both sisters took their deepest secrets to their graves. But now, with newly discovered interviews, family testimonies, and Olivia's final confessions before her death at 104, we can finally reveal what really tore these sisters apart. The woman who broke her silence was the last surviving star of Hollywood's golden age. After 40 years of refusing to discuss Joan, Olivia finally spoke the truth about their relationship. Her words will shock you. Let's go back to where it all began. Tokyo, 1917. 15-month-old Olivia de Havilland watches as her parents bring home a new baby, Joan. But this wasn't typical sibling adjustment. What happened next was nothing short of childhood warfare. According to Joan's later revelations, Olivia so hated the idea of having a sibling that she wouldn't go near my crib. Joan remembered not one act of kindness from Olivia throughout my childhood. But the violence was just beginning. Biographer Charles Hyam documented that Olivia would tear up hand-me-down clothes before giving them to Joan, forcing her younger sister to sew them back together if she wanted anything to wear. Joan would later write in her autobiography, No Bed of Roses, that Olivia relished in agonizing her. The physical attacks escalated throughout their childhood. During what Joan described as savage wrestling matches, Olivia's violence became so extreme that she fractured Joan's collarbone when she pulled her sister against a swimming pool ledge. Joan was only 16 years old at the time and ended up in a cast for months. But perhaps the most telling incident happened when Joan was just 9 years old. Given a school assignment to write a mock will, Olivia penned these devastating words. I bequeath to my sister Joan the ability to win boys' hearts, which she does not have at present. Their mother made everything worse. Lillian de Havilland clearly favored Olivia, constantly reminding Joan of her limitations with the cutting phrase, I can, but Joan can't. When Joan wanted to follow Olivia into acting, their mother refused to let her use the family name, saying Warner Brothers was Olivia's studio. But there was something even darker happening in their household. Their stepfather, George Fontaine, whom Olivia nicknamed the Iron Duke, was a strict disciplinarian who enforced what Joan called a military childhood. When they misbehaved, he would offer a choice: swallow cod liver oil, which would induce vomiting, or take a beating on the shins with a wooden hanger. Joan later revealed in therapy sessions that the washcloth would tarry too long in intimate places during bath times when their mother was away. When Olivia went to school with bruises covering her legs, administrators warned Fontaine to stop, but nothing changed. Joan was living in terror, not just of her sister's violence, but of systematic abuse that no child should endure. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was systematic psychological and physical abuse that would shape both sisters for the rest of their lives. March 5th, 1942, the Ambassador Hotel. For the first time in Academy Awards history, two sisters were nominated against each other for Best Actress. Olivia for Hold Back the Dawn and Joan for Suspicion. Joan had almost not attended the ceremony. She was convinced she wouldn't win. If she hadn't won the previous year for what she considered her superior performance in Rebecca, why would she win now? It was only when Olivia showed up on her film set with a dress and insisted she attend that Joan agreed to go. The sisters were seated directly across from each other. As presenter Ginger Rogers opened the envelope, the entire ballroom fell silent. When Joan Fontaine was announced, Joan froze in shock. She later wrote, "All the animus we'd felt toward each other as children, the hair pullings, the savage wrestling matches, the time Olivia fractured my collarbone, all came rushing back in kaleidoscopic imagery. My paralysis was a total." But here's where the story gets controversial. For 80 years, we've heard two completely different versions of what happened next. Joan's version: she tried to congratulate Olivia, but her sister coldly rejected her attempts. Olivia's version: Joan was the one who snubbed her congratulations, leaving Olivia embarrassed and offended. But witnesses at the ceremony tell a completely different story. Life magazine's Oliver Jensen was there. He described the actual moment. When the Oscar went to Joan, Olivia only seized her sister's hand and crowed, "We've got it." The truth was, neither sister snubbed the other. Both women were paralyzed by the moment. The room was watching for drama, expecting tears or rage. Instead, they witnessed two traumatized sisters unable to process what was happening. Olivia's reaction was actually generous, claiming Joan's victory as their shared success. But the psychological damage was already done. Joan's win created a seismic shift in their relationship. For the first time in their lives, Joan had achieved something first. She had beaten her older sister at the game Olivia had been playing longer. The child who had always been told "I can, but Joan can't," had just proven everyone wrong on the biggest stage in Hollywood. While the Oscar drama was unfolding publicly, a more devastating betrayal was happening behind the scenes. And it involved one of Hollywood's most eligible bachelors, British actor Brian Aherne. Aherne was tall, sophisticated, and charming. He had been romantically involved with Olivia before Joan ever met him. They attended parties together, were photographed at premieres, and Hollywood insiders considered them a perfect match. But Joan had other plans. According to Life magazine, Joan deliberately met and seized Aherne from her sister. But the story is even more calculated than that. Joan was attending a party hosted by Aherne when a fortune teller predicted she would marry him. The psychic also suggested Joan adopt her stepfather's surname, saying, "Joan Fontaine is a success name." Joan took both suggestions to heart. She began pursuing Aherne with ruthless determination, knowing full well that he was involved with Olivia. When Aherne started showing interest in Joan, she played the wounded younger sister perfectly, telling him stories of Olivia's childhood cruelty and painting herself as the victim who deserved love. The night before their wedding, Ahern got cold feet. He had a friend call Joan to tell her he was backing out. Joan's response was legendary. She told the friend to tell Ahern that his timing was terrible and there was no way he was going to leave her at the altar. They were getting married the next day, and if necessary, they could get divorced afterward. Ahern showed up, but Joan's victory came at a devastating cost. Olivia was humiliated. The man she had been dating, possibly even considering marrying, had been stolen by her younger sister. This wasn't just romantic rivalry. This was Joan's calculated revenge for a lifetime of abuse. 5 years later, 1947, the 19th Academy Awards. Now it was Olivia's turn. Nominated for To Each His Own, she won her first Oscar. But what happened backstage would haunt both sisters forever. Joan approached Olivia to offer congratulations, but when Joan extended her hand, Olivia looked directly at her sister and deliberately turned away. Joan told the Associated Press days later, trying to save face. "I started to shake hands with her, but she seemed very occupied and busy. Maybe she didn't see me." But there was no doubt about Olivia's intentions. She made sure everyone knew it was deliberate, coldly stating to the same reporter, "Our relations have been quite strained for some time. I couldn't change my attitude." This public humiliation devastated Joan. But the real revenge was happening behind the scenes. Olivia had been planning this for over a year, ever since Joan married Brian Ahern and made disparaging comments about her in a 1946 magazine interview. Using her industry connections, Olivia began systematically sabotaging Joan's career. She whispered to directors that Joan was difficult to work with. She spread rumors about Joan's professionalism. When they were considered for the same roles, Olivia made sure casting directors heard her concerns about her sister. The most devastating blow came from Joan's own generosity years earlier. When director George Cukor told Joan she was too stylish for Melanie in Gone with the Wind, Joan unwittingly suggested, "Well, what about my sister?" That moment of kindness cost Joan the role that would define Olivia's legacy and earn her first Oscar nomination. By the 1960s, there were surprising signs of hope. Joan spent Christmas with Olivia in 1961. They were photographed laughing together at a party in 1967. Most remarkably, Joan visited Olivia in Paris in 1969 during her sister's marital and financial difficulties, staying for several weeks to help her through the crisis. For a brief moment, it seemed like the sisters might finally heal their wounds. Joan was genuinely concerned about Olivia's well-being. Olivia seemed grateful for her sister's support during one of the darkest periods of her life. They shared meals, walked through Paris together, and talked about their childhood for the first time in decades. But in 1975, their mother Lillian was dying of cancer, and this became the point of no return. The sisters violently disagreed about their mother's care. Olivia wanted their 88-year-old mother to undergo surgery for her cancer. Joan, who had spent months preparing their mother for death, was horrified. Lillian had told Joan she was ready to go and didn't want more suffering. According to Joan's autobiography, the arguments became vicious. Olivia accused Joan of giving up on their mother. Joan accused Olivia of prolonging their mother's agony for selfish reasons. Neither sister could understand the other's perspective. The battle over their mother's medical care became so bitter that they stopped speaking entirely. Joan was touring with a play, performing night after night while worrying about her dying mother. Olivia was handling all the medical decisions as the older sister and executor of their mother's affairs. When Lillian died, Olivia made all arrangements without consulting Joan. She handled the cremation, planned the memorial service, and notified family friends. Joan was performing when their mother died. Olivia sent a telegram to inform her, but it took 2 weeks to reach Joan at her next tour stop. By then, the funeral was over. Joan was devastated. She accused Olivia of deliberately excluding her from their mother's final moments. Olivia claimed she had tried to reach Joan, but that Joan was too busy with her career to attend. The truth was probably somewhere in between. Olivia was overwhelmed with grief and responsibility. Joan was trapped by professional commitments and her own complicated feelings about their mother. Both sisters were doing their best in an impossible situation, but their decades of resentment poisoned every interaction. At the memorial service Joan fought to attend, their only interaction was when Olivia handed Joan the urn to scatter some ashes. They stood in complete silence, two grieving sisters who couldn't comfort each other. Then they walked away and never spoke again. For 38 years after their mother's funeral, the sisters maintained total silence. They attended the same Hollywood events, but sat at opposite ends of venues. When they discovered they were in adjacent hotel rooms in Beverly Hills in 1989, Joan immediately checked out. Joan died in December 2013 at age 96. Olivia's initial response was brief and formal. I was shocked and saddened to learn of the passing of my sister. But privately, sources revealed Olivia was devastated. A family friend told the Daily Mail that Olivia was certainly in mourning and has made it clear that she will never forget Joan. The National Enquirer reported that Olivia was consumed with regret after Joan's death. When Joan was alive, it was easy for Olivia to hate her, a source claimed. Now, Olivia says if she could take it all back, the sniping, the bad blood, and the feuds, she would. But the most stunning revelation came in 2016 when Olivia was 99 years old. In a rare interview with People magazine, she made a confession that shocked Hollywood insiders who had followed their feud for decades. For the first time in nearly 80 years, she took responsibility. She called Joan a brilliant, multi-talented person, but admitted, "I can think of many occasions where my reaction to deliberately inconsiderate behavior was defensive." Reading between the lines, Olivia was finally admitting that she had been reactive and unforgiving throughout their relationship. At 99 years old, she was acknowledging that perhaps she had been too harsh, but her most revealing confession was still to come. In 2018, at age 101, Olivia filed a lawsuit against FX Networks for their portrayal of her in Feud, Bet, and Joan. She was deeply offended by scenes showing her character calling Joan nasty names and gossiping about other actresses. But why would fictional portrayal bother someone who had feuded publicly for decades? Because by then, Olivia had come to believe that their entire public feud had been largely a media creation. While there was real tension between the sisters, the legendary Hollywood feud had been amplified by studios and press who benefited from the drama. In her final interview at age 102, Olivia made a statement that reframed everything. "I think I have become a monomania with her. It is painful to think that her own life is incomplete to such a degree that it's still so keyed to me." This wasn't hatred speaking. This was someone who finally understood that Joan had been as much a victim of their circumstances as she was. Perhaps the most heartbreaking revelation came from sources close to Olivia in her final years. There were several occasions over the decades when Olivia almost reached out to reconcile. In 1978, when Joan's autobiography, No Bed of Roses, was published, Olivia spent weeks writing and rewriting a letter to her sister. She wanted to explain her side, to apologize for some things, to try to find a way forward. The letter was never sent. In 1991, when Joan's first husband, Brian Ahern, died, Olivia considered attending the funeral. She even made travel arrangements to Los Angeles. At the last minute, she couldn't go through with it. Most heartbreakingly, in 2012, when Joan was 95 and clearly in declining health, Olivia drafted a final letter. She wanted to tell Joan that she loved her, that she was proud of her career, that she regretted how things had turned out between them. Again, the letter was never sent. Joan died never knowing that her sister had spent years trying to find a way back to her. She died believing that Olivia's heart was as cold as her public persona suggested. The truth was far more complex and far more tragic. The most shocking detail came from Joan's daughter, Deborah Dozier Potter. Despite never speaking to Joan after 1975, Olivia had maintained a loving relationship with Joan's daughter and grandchildren throughout her life. She sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, and called regularly. When Joan discovered that her daughters had been keeping up secret friendships with Olivia, she was furious. This drove another wedge between Joan and her own daughters, who couldn't understand why their mother wouldn't reconcile with their beloved Aunt Olivia. This wasn't the behavior of someone consumed with hatred. This was someone who had lost her way in a family tragedy that spiraled beyond control. Olivia loved Joan's children because they were part of Joan, the sister she had never stopped loving despite everything that had happened between them. When Olivia died in July 2020 at age 104, her will contained one final surprise. She had left substantial bequests to Joan's daughter and grandchildren, people she had continued loving even while being estranged from Joan herself. Her final years were spent in Paris, largely isolated from Hollywood. Friends said she kept a photo of Joan on her bedside table until the day she died. She would spend hours looking through old photographs, including many pictures of herself and Joan as young women, before the fame and the feuding tore them apart forever. The de Havilland-Fontaine rivalry became the template for every celebrity feud that followed. It had everything: childhood trauma, professional jealousy, romantic rivalry, family secrets, and public humiliation. But what made it truly legendary was its longevity and the fact that both women were immensely talented actresses who deserved better than to be remembered primarily for their hatred of each other. Both sisters achieved incredible success. Olivia won 2 Academy Awards and was nominated for 5. She successfully challenged the studio system and changed labor laws for actors forever through the landmark de Havilland Law. Joan won 1 Oscar and was nominated for 3, creating some of the most memorable performances in film noir and psychological thrillers. Yet their professional achievements were constantly overshadowed by their personal war. Every interview, every public appearance, every award ceremony became an opportunity for the press to stoke the flames of their rivalry. In her final years, Olivia seemed to understand this. She rarely gave interviews, and when she did, she tried to focus on her work rather than her relationship with Joan. But the damage was done. Their feud had taken on a life of its own. At 89, Olivia de Havilland finally revealed the truth that had haunted her for nearly a century. Their legendary feud was built on a foundation of childhood trauma, industry manipulation, and 2 proud women who were too wounded to find their way back to each other. In her final interviews, when pressed about Joan, Olivia's careful composure would crack slightly. "I loved her so much as a child," she admitted in one rare moment of vulnerability. This from a woman who had spent 40 years refusing to even say her sister's name in public. The real tragedy of Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine isn't that they hated each other. It's that they never stopped loving each other, even when that love was buried under decades of hurt, pride, and misunderstanding. They were 2 brilliant, talented, accomplished women who were destroyed by wounds they couldn't heal and pride they couldn't swallow. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about the price of holding grudges, the power of childhood trauma to shape entire lives, and the tragic waste that occurs when love is overcome by pride. In the end, they were both prisoners of their own making, trapped in a war that neither really wanted to fight, but neither knew how to end. Olivia de Havilland died at 104, the last great star of Hollywood's golden age. Her final secret wasn't about Joan at all, it was about herself. At 89, she had finally learned that being right isn't worth being alone, that pride is a cold companion in old age, and that love, even wounded and buried love, never really dies. Their feud is over now. Both sisters are gone, But their story remains as a powerful reminder of what happens when family bonds are broken and pride prevents healing. In Hollywood, where everything is drama and performance, theirs was the most real and most devastating performance of all. A lifetime spent pretending not to care about the person who mattered most. What other Hollywood feuds do you think were more complicated than they appeared? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Vintage Vault for more buried secrets from Hollywood's golden age. Next week, we're revealing the shocking truth about Bette Davis and Joan Crawford on the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And trust me, it's not what you think.